I wanted to do a short video last night. I ended up going 2 hours. So I'm not sure how long I'm going to be out here for, but just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about this video I was just watching from Danielle DiMartino Booth, who I have mad respect for. I love the girl. She has great information and been following her for a very long time. But the idea behind what gaslighting is to the economy when it comes to the Federal Reserve's monetary policy is not what a lot of people are saying, and especially not what Danielle is saying, right? So when I think about like what it is that the narrative is out there when it comes to interest rate setting policies, the inflation rate, what it is that people believe is going on out there, or what it is they believe that the Federal Reserve is attempting to do, is very misunderstood and misguided, and it's done on purpose. Now, I have done many videos talking about the Federal Reserve's gaslighting and how it is that they are using this to conduct themselves when it comes to their monetary policy. Now, again, I give mad respect to Danielle DiMartino Booth, but the recent video that she talked about with gaslighting, she is actually helping the Federal Reserve. She is actually pushing information out and leading people right down a path that is benefiting the Federal Reserve's monetary policy and their outcome. And I don't think she means to do it. She has fallen into the narrative just like everybody else has. And it is, again, it is part of the issues coming from the problems that the Federal Reserve was facing with a low neutral interest rate and a Fed funds rate that was close to the lower bound of zero. Now, this is the information that, or the idea that the Federal Reserve is gaslighting from the view like Danielle is giving, right? And again, like, I don't want to knock, I just want to say, like, I really appreciate all her information and I have mad respect for her, okay? I want to put that out there. It's the narrative that she is using, right? Because a lot of people are falling down this line of thought that the Federal Reserve is saying that inflation is here, but it's really up here, right? And this is the gaslighting. They're leading people to believe that there's a lower inflation, but we all know deep down inside there's a higher inflation rate taking place. This is the information that is actually benefiting the Federal Reserve. When people take this sort of line of thought, that is a communication that is now, when you internalize this and use this for your future beliefs as far as, investments or business or whatever it is you're doing, you are actually benefiting the Federal Reserve by taking on this sort of idea, right? Because it's too low of an inflation expectation. That was the problem. They were looking, needing, desiring, and attempting to achieve a higher inflation expectation. They are totally getting it. Now, by believing that the inflation is not here, but actually up here, that benefits the Federal Reserve. Straight up. It is pushing information out there that is benefiting the Federal Reserve. See, the Federal Reserve is actually seeking to achieve an inflation rate that is moderately above 2% for some time. Now, we have gone over this so many times, and I will give the information yet again, because this is like something that I believe that 99% of the people are missing. And when they go and start putting out information or going along the ideas that inflation is much more elevated than what they are giving the stated, inflation rate is, then that is leading right into the Federal Reserve's monetary policy, what it is that they needed, the higher inflation expectation. Coming from John Williams, president of the New York Fed, dated November 30th, 2018. Monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world. Today, we face an altogether different set of problems stemming from a very low neutral interest rate. That is, the short-term real interest rate consistent with an economy operating at its potential alongside low and stable inflation. Ironically, the problem we need to solve these days is the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. That was the problem they needed to solve. And I know we have gone over this so many times. And I know that I'm just reiterating the same information that I have put out there and the things that I keep talking about, but this is so critical. Like, here I'm listening to one of my favorite people when it comes to information. This is one of the reasons why I don't even listen to other YouTubers out there, right? Is because of this exact reason. Okay? I go and I listen to it and I can see the mistake being made. This is not taking the true monetary policy into consideration on what is going on. Right? Stated right here, Jerome Powell. Or I'm sorry, this is coming from Michelle Bowman. And this was dated just not too long ago, April 5th, right? 2025, Michelle Bowman. The title of this speech, Risk and Uncertainty in Monetary Policy, Current and Past Consideration. Michelle Bowman is a voting member of the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee. In this speech, she states, another notable change to the strategy statement was the adoption of what some refer to as asymmetric flexible average inflation targeting, or temporary price level targeting. Specifically, the new statement noted that in order to anchor long-term inflation expectations at its 2% goal, the committee seeks to achieve inflation that averages 2% over time, and therefore judges that following periods when inflation has been running persistently below 2%, the appropriate monetary policy will likely aim to achieve inflation moderately above 2% for some time. Right? They need inflation moderately above 2%. It doesn't matter if it's like they're shooting for here. It doesn't matter. It's up here somewhere, whether they say it's there or not. They're looking for that. They're not trying to bring it down. They're trying to keep it up elevated. They need that. The revision to the FOMC statement focused on monetary policy in a world of structurally low interest rates, disinflationary forces, and an apparent insensitivity of inflation to low levels of unemployment. That is probably one of the key issues that the Federal Reserve was facing. And this is probably one of the most confusing statements out there. An apparent insensitivity of inflation to low levels of unemployment. All right. See, typically when you had low levels of unemployment, you would have high inflationary scenarios from that. Remember at the end of the Trump administration? Historically low unemployment numbers and no inflation. The Fed should be printing money, taking interest rates into negative territory. This is what Donald Trump was saying at the time, right? This was the insensitivity to the unemployment that inflation was experiencing, or the lack of inflation there is. Okay? Again, this was the problems that the Federal Reserve was facing. They didn't have a problem with an inflation scenario that was running rampant. They were having a problem that they couldn't find inflation, right? This speech, Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World, was all about how it is that they were planning on getting inflation, okay? Listen to this. That was Michelle Bowman that I just read from, right? Talking about seeking a 2% average inflation rate over time, and that the appropriate monetary policy would likely seek to achieve that inflation rate moderately above 2% for some time. That was just stated from Michelle Bowman just a couple of months ago. Again, a voting member of the FOMC. This is what John Williams had to say back in November of 2018. I mean, how many years ago is this now? 4 or 5 years ago. Okay. One of the options here is seeking average inflation targeting, whereby a central bank purposefully aims to achieve an above average inflation in good times when the lower bound is not constrained. Properly designed and implemented, such an overshoot can offset the inflation undershoot during bad times, so that the long run average inflation rate and inflation expectations are in line with the target. See, again, it's just like the Federal Reserve knew way back 5 years ago that they would be deploying this exact strategy. And again, this is like the information that I hear out there about, like, well, inflation's not here, but it's actually up here, and they are lying to you. Inflation's really up here. This is perpetuating the problem. This is perpetuating the very thing that is resulting in the monetary policy seeking its achievements. I don't even know how to even describe this. This is totally falling in line with what it is that they want the people to believe. This idea that inflation is actually here when they're trying to state it's down here and people know it's way up here and they can feel it and they talk about it and they bitch about it all day all over the YouTube channel, that is actually benefiting the Federal Reserve. That is creating the monetary policy that the Federal Reserve was actually looking for. And believing that they screwed up only makes it better. It's just, I know that's really, I know like stating that most people will hear that and go like, what in the world is this dude talking about? This is the case, right? And we know this. We know this all the way going back to Ben Bernanke, right? Ben Bernanke said it, that they were going to use their words, forward guidance, right? They were going to use the idea of what it is that they plan on doing into the future in order to guide the markets. He used the idea of a gold machine within a speech that was given back in the early 2000s, right? In November of 2002. He gave a speech that was titled this. Let me give it to you here. Remarks by Governor Ben Bernanke before the National Economics Club of Washington, D.C., November 21st, 2020, of 2002. There we go. Deflation, making sure it doesn't happen here. See, that was their major concern, deflation, way back 20 years ago, 22 years ago. It wasn't inflation that they were worried about. They were like, holy crap, what are we going to do when we hit the lower bound of zero? We're not going to have any room to move anymore. Right? Stimulating the economy will not be something that will be possible. Goes like this. Because central banks conveniently conduct monetary policy by manipulating the short-term nominal interest rates, some observers have concluded that when the key rate stands at or near zero, the central bank has run out of ammunition. This is Ben Bernanke's own statements talking about what they were planning on, what they were seeing happening, years down the road. It was 5-6 years before they hit the lower bound, right? It no longer has power to expand aggregate demand. See, if you can't lower interest rates, what you are eventually going to have a problem with is that the demand going into the economy will cease to exist, and hence economic activity, right? This is what he's saying. It is true that once the policy rate has been driven down to zero, a central bank can no longer use its traditional means of stimulating aggregate demand, and thus will be operating in less familiar territory. 20 years ago, they knew that dropping of interest rates was no longer going to be an effective tool. He said it then. They could feel it, they knew it, they had it in their head that there was going to have to be a different way. That the adjustment of interest rates was going to be like, man, this is like it doesn't do anything. It's like hitting the gas and nothing happens. Right? And we already know this, the insensitivity that Michelle Bowman was talking about to low interest rates. The insensitivity of unemployment to low interest rates. Okay. So he goes on to say, but suppose that despite all the precautions, deflation were to take hold in the U.S. economy, moreover, that the Fed's policy instrument, the Fed funds rate, were to fall to zero. What then? Right? What are you going to do? See, this is what they knew this again a long time ago. Going into quantitative easing, this is what they had to say. All right. The conclusion that deflation is always reversible under a fiat money system follows from basic economic reasoning. A little parable may prove useful. Today, an ounce of gold sells for $300 or more or less. And remember, this was 20-something years ago, $300, right? Makes you wish you had loaded up on it. Now, suppose that the modern alchemist solves his subject's oldest problem by finding a way to produce unlimited amounts of new gold at essentially no cost. Moreover, his invention is widely publicized and scientifically verified. He announces his intention to begin massive production of gold within days. What would happen to the price of gold? Presumably, the potentially unlimited supply of cheap gold would cause the market price of gold to plummet. See, just the idea. Indeed, If the market for gold is any degree efficient, the price of gold would collapse immediately after the announcement of the invention before the alchemists had produced and marketed a single ounce of the yellow metal. They were planning on using their words, right? Doesn't matter if they did. It doesn't matter if they have a gold machine. It doesn't matter if they're producing gold. All they have to do is make sure that the people believe it. That's it, right? That's the only thing they need. What has this got to do with monetary policy? Like gold, the U.S. dollars have value only to the extent that they are strictly limited in supply. But the U.S. government has a technology called a printing press, or today its electronic equivalent, that allows it to produce as many U.S. dollars as it wishes at essentially no cost. You see this? This is what they were planning on using 20 years ago. See, some people just don't care. They're like, man, the Fed's lost their mind. They don't know what they're doing. No, they know, man. This strategy is working out very well. By increasing the number of U.S. dollars in circulation, or even by credibly threatening to do so. See, that money doesn't actually have to enter. All you have to do is just credibly threaten that it's going to happen. The U.S. government can also reduce the value of dollars in terms of goods and services, which is equivalent to raising the prices in dollars of those goods and services. See, this is what they were planning on doing, on dealing with the fact that the inflation scenario was becoming very, very difficult for them to find, right? Think about all the quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 that failed the Federal Reserve. They were running out of monetary policy. They couldn't do it anymore, right? Let me see. This is, which one was this? Oh, no, that's the monetary policy strategy. Sorry. See, this is one of the problems that they were facing at the lower bound. See, the downward shift in inflation expectation has a second round effect on real interest rates, the economy, and inflation. When policy is constrained by the effective lower bound, the downward shift in inflation expectation raises the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus and making the downturn worse and reducing inflation even more. Even in times when policy is not constrained, the expectation of below target inflation in the future affects current decisions, putting additional downward pressure on inflation. In other words, monetary policy is always swimming upstream, fighting a current of too low inflation expectation that interferes with achieving the target inflation rate. So the Federal Reserve was just like, damn it, you guys aren't thinking that there's enough inflation. That's the problem that they were facing. They were like, man, everybody out there doesn't believe there's inflation. And when you have Donald Trump saying there's no inflation, it didn't help any, did it? Right? And so now the Federal Reserve's like, man, if we could only get the inflation expectation to be elevated, we could actually have our monetary policy back, because they are going to run out of ammo. And they knew it. Ben Bernanke knew it 20-something years ago. Now, all this idea that the Federal Reserve is lying to you, inflation is not here, it's way up here, right? If you do not see the fact that that is actually leading into exactly what the Federal Reserve needed in order to conduct themselves, I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, it's right here. It's crystal clear. Right? Right? It's crystal clear. It's all right there in their words. You just have to see it for what it is. Most people don't want to see it this way. They want to see it in a different fashion. Yes, it is painful experience. It is going to destroy you. And the idea that if you have to work really hard for your money, the amount of money that is going to take to have a standard of living that is going to maintain what it is that you are experiencing is going to be difficult going into the future. And it's because of the things that are happening at the Federal Reserve. Yes, I agree to all that stuff. It doesn't make it any different, right? It doesn't change anything. Facts are facts. This is it. This is their monetary policy. This is how they're conducting themselves. And if they do not have a higher inflation expectation coming from the people within the economy, they will not be able to achieve their strategies. Like if everybody knew the information that I am presenting within this 20-minute video so far, if everybody knew exactly this information, they would fail. The Fed would end almost immediately. Because this strategy is secret, right? It doesn't get stated over the mainstream media. Even people who work for the Federal Reserve don't see it, right? I mean, or who had worked at the Federal Reserve don't see it. I'm the only one that I know of that has gone this deep into this to expose it to you, to not to you people, but to the people, right? So that we can all like figure it out for ourselves. Like I don't know why more people don't dive into this. I don't know why this is not being more exposed. I do not know why it is that I'm the only one in a 99 Ford Explorer with fuzzy dice hanging from the mirror, breaking this down from decades of speeches, proving time and time again that the low neutral interest rate environment has interfered with their monetary policy. They have no ammo. And that they figured it out, that the tools that they have developed over the last 2 decades in order to communicate what it is that they plan on doing going into the future works more for a monetary policy than the actual adjustment of interest rates. That's another, like, most people don't see it. They don't understand that it's the Fed's words and what it is that they are communicating out there to the people to believe has more effect on the economy than the actual adjusting of interest rates does. Right? That just another blows people's minds. But that's the truth of it. And it's within their own statements that they say this. Go and read Jefferson's speech just given the other 2 weeks ago, right? Talk all about the communications and how it is that, you know, back in prior to Greenspan's day, the Federal Reserve wouldn't communicate interest rate adjustments. You would just wake up one day and boom, interest rate adjustments had happened. And in fact, they said that the only way to really truly conduct monetary policy is to keep it secret and to shock the markets with interest rate adjustments, to just wake up one day and boom, it was done. But over time, they realized that they were having to communicate those interest rate adjustments out earlier in order to get more out of it. And then they realized as the more they were communicating these interest rate adjustments, the more that they were getting out of the interest rate adjustments, the more they realized, man, it's more about the communication itself than it is about the interest rate adjustments. And so they came up with all kinds of brilliant tools in order to communicate this stuff out to the people. And now if you just look out there, just Google it, interest rate cuts, right? And just look at all the massive articles out there. Nobody has any idea about what it is that they plan on doing. Not a single person. Like they all are just absolutely confused by it. And really what it comes down to is the dual mandate. It's not hard to see, right? People are like, when are they going to cut? What are they doing? It's just like, it doesn't matter. That part doesn't matter. Cutting interest rates won't have any real impact on the economy, and it doesn't matter when they do, right? Even if they were to cut interest rates, they wouldn't get below the neutral interest rate to stimulate the economy. So no matter what, they're going to be restricting. The only thing that would actually stimulate the economy is the belief of it. Right? It is the belief that they're going to be cutting interest rates. That stimulates the economy because the cutting of interest rates doesn't do anything. And that's what's like so mind-blowing to people out there. And I guess I'm the only one who sees it this way. This is what I have to write the course on, is to be able to see this, to be able to see it this way. Right? Because if you fall into the idea that the Federal Reserve is gaslighting you, right, by telling you that that inflation's here, but it's way up here, right, and they're lying to you. Inflation's not here; it's way up here, and this is how come you're feeling so much pain and suffering. You know, it's because they're lying to you. That totally works to their benefit, right? It totally works to their benefit. Okay, let's read some comments. I've been hearing it for years. NSFG. I don't need to go watch anything. All right, let's see here. Wow, look at all these comments. Good morning. All right, like that hat. Yeah, I've had this hat for a very long time. I've had this all the way since back when Ron Paul was actually attempting to run for president. All right. Good morning. Hit the like button. Yes, thank you, dishes. All right, liked. Early morning class. Yeah, microphone clipping badly. Is it? I'm sorry. Like the button. All right. The above is great read on currency piece, national banks about the first Great Depression. Great panic. Good morning, everyone. The fact that gas prices in New Mexico was $1.50 and now has nothing to do with how you feel. slide the cursor over the like button. It's early. Let's go. Yes, bro. Bro, don't care about the inflation level. We care about the price level that we lost until average wages catches up. Okay, I mean, here's the thing. Like, what are you going to do about it? All right? What are you going to do? See, I look out there and I think, okay, so you want to blame it on this particular president, so therefore you're really, really hopeful that this next president, whoever it is going to come in there and save the day. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm just saying this is kind of like the look out there that I see. I don't think about how impactful and how damaging and all that other stuff is. I think about what it is that I need to do about it. Right? Like I could say, oh man, I bitch and complain about this, right? Yeah, I know. Like, what difference does that make? Like, it's just like it's hard work. It sucks. It's a crap environment. Like, I would love not to have to work in the rain, right? But I had to buy rain gear. It's just like because I wanted to work. So it's just like to understand the environment for what it is. Inflation sucks. We are in a monetary system that is not a gold standard. We have an inflationary currency because there ever has to be new issuance of currency coming into the system without suffering through collapse. Now, if you want to go through collapse, that's cool. I'm down for it. Let's do a collapse thing. I mean, I don't care. It's just another type of environment to be in. And I'm not worried about it. A lot of people will be very much worried about it, and they will suffer the consequences from being unprepared for a situation like that. I hope that I'm not one of those people, but I mean, considering that we're not doing that, we're doing this. This is what I'm doing, right? And I don't complain about it. I just figure out what it is I need to do about it. All right, bought a bag of silver dimes, $50 face value to celebrate silver beatdown. Cost me a bit less. We'll get it next Friday with any luck. Well, all right. Well, good for you, man. Remember when gas was touching $5 a gallon in 2012? I remember when it was touching $5 a gallon in 2005. Right? I mean, when did it hit $150 a barrel? Like in 2005 or something. All right. Good morning, all you fine-ass people. Well, good morning, GMA Merkel. So you got my message this morning on Telegram, huh? Yeah, I did, brother. Thank you so much. That was actually, I don't typically, I mean, I do watch some YouTube, but I don't really have a whole lot of time, right? So, I mean, to sit through a video, especially to take it in without like, messing around doing something else where I'm like, not really focusing in on what's being said within the video, I don't have a lot of time to do it. So when you sent me a Danielle DiMartino Booth video, I'm thinking, well, damn, this has got to be worth it, right? Because I really like this lady. I really like what she has to say. And, when I started listening to it, and I'm like, yeah, another one, right? Another one that's not seeing it, from this angle, from this point of view. And this is somebody who's supposed to be like, really qualified within the Federal Reserve's understandings, like, she knows, right? She's in the know. And I'm not saying that she doesn't know. I'm just saying she didn't say anything about this. And that the idea of what it is that she was putting out for information was actually leading down to the Federal Reserve's benefit. Again, like, I don't know, like I presented the information right here for you. I give you the evidence. I mean, you can go and look for it all yourself. All this stuff comes directly from the Federal Reserve. I don't pull this out from, some crazy conspiracy theorist blogger out there who's like, giving this idea about what it is. This is directly from the Fed itself. Like, all the information I get is coming from the Fed. Right. I generally, unless I'm giving like some sort of anecdotal evidence of something that I'm seeing personally, I do not provide you with any information that I do not have some sort of proof to. Like, ever. We'll never do that. Like, because what do I know? I'm the uneducated economist. Somebody calls me out on it. I want to be able to go, boom, right there. That's where I got it. Like, I didn't say it. This guy said it. Right. And it's the guy at the Fed. Colin Hard 8, right on. Deja vu, thank you for being here. All right, just looking through my 1885 Liberty Head dollars this morning. Fun. Yeah, I love digging through the silver. It is a lot of fun. Okay, let's cruise down here to the bottom and see what we got going on. Exactly. The whole system is rigged. You just got to go with it. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is that if you really want to fight the system, do what I'm doing, right? Understand it to this level. You understand it to this level, and you're like, oh, holy crap, man, I see your strategy and it's totally working because the mainstream media is propagating it and then the YouTubers are propagating it and everybody else seems to be following in line with it. I'm I see it. I see it clearly. I see it within your communications that you are talking to the other bankers about. I've been reading that stuff, guys. Like, they don't put that out there for everybody to read. Nobody seems to write articles about it. Nobody does videos about this thing. I do. Right? Like, I literally will do a video where I read these speeches word for word and we break them down, to figure out what it is that's happening. That's how it is that I'm understanding there's the strategy as well as I do. Right? This is the FOMC has 12 voting members on it. They talk, they communicate to each other. They don't necessarily communicate those same things to the mainstream. When they're out there doing their interviews on CNBC and stuff, and I'm looking at them, I'm like, you're not like, that's when the gaslighting has taken place, like straight up, like every single communication that ever has come out on a mainstream media or on a news article that has a Federal Reserve statement behind it or a communication behind it is the gaslighting. It is the propaganda, because whatever it is that's being said there is in line with what it is that they are trying to do for their communications to conduct their monetary policy. It is like you have to look at it in order to understand that there's two things happening here. We know the strategy, and we know the strategy is the communications, the propaganda. So we look at the propaganda to see what it is that they are trying to communicate out there, because we know in the background what it is that they are truly trying to do, and that's to raise the inflation expectation in order to get their monetary policy back. The low neutral interest rate world doesn't give them the ammo to do something about the economy when it goes into recession. The higher the inflation expectation, the more this begins to raise the neutral interest rate, the rate that is neither restricting nor accommodating the economy. And if they can stand still and get the inflation expectation elevated, they can raise that neutral interest rate. And if they raise the neutral interest rate while standing still, it actually reduces the amount of restriction to the economy. People wonder why it is that the economy is doing as well as it is. I did a video about this months ago. This exact thing, describing that right there. Tried to draw it out on little graphs and stuff and made little stick figures and things, right? It didn't work out too well, but I think I got to communicate it out there to the people. Like, I have to get this out there to you in order for you to see it too, right? And I don't know who else is going to do that. All right. Did I get a super chat? Where is that thing? Well, I see the money up there, but I don't see where the chat is. Well, hopefully it'll pop up here in a second, but I don't see it. All right. All right. Just quit my job last month because they forced digital meters on everyone's home here. I'm tired of all the surveillance, and I am choosing to focus on my family, our home, and our health. I totally get it, man. And there was a time that I was very much in line with that sort of thought and behavior. Like, I didn't carry a cell phone. I only used cash, didn't do debit cards, none of that stuff. Right? Only, I took my check to the bank, cashed it out, kind of thing. Like, I was very much trying to exit as much as myself out of the system as I could. And I tell you, it was very slow. It was very boring. I didn't have a whole lot of communications out there, connections, and, opportunities, none of that stuff. It was all very limited. Now, of course, I was living on a hobby farm, and I was, quite content, raising the birds and doing the garden and doing all the other stuff. So I didn't stress it out too much, that I didn't have a whole lot going on. But when I did start, expanding into, getting the cell phone and then doing the communications again and eventually starting the YouTube channel and stuff, it benefited my life immensely. So you have to be able to participate within the system in order to take advantage of the system. But, I understand if you want to get out of it completely, because, I was there at one time, and I tell you, it was a pretty peaceful pretty peaceful time. Uh, What is your problem with my caps? I'm yelling. What's going on with the feed here? How come I'm not getting any live chat? All messages are visible. Let's see. Okay, there we go. There was that. Bang. Okay. Hey, Tim, thank you very much for the $20. Good morning. What is the most universal barter item? I don't know. I mean, I guess it would be silver, right? The most universal barter item would probably be silver. I mean, if you were just looking for something that you could carry completely around the world that would be recognizable, useful, fungible, all the stuff that goes along with it, I would imagine that it would be silver. But after that, I think for an individual person, like your greatest bartering tool that you could ever possibly have would be your skills, right? Because nobody can take them from you, right? You retain them forever. The harder you work at them, the better you get, the more useful they are, depending on what it is that you can do. Many skills that you could take on, that's the bartering tool, because everybody needs help with something, right? There's always something out there that you can do that somebody else can't, all right, or doesn't know how to, or you can just simply do it better or more efficiently or whatever, That to me would probably be the number one barter tool. But if you're looking for like an actual physical item, then I would think that it would be silver, right? It's the most recognized, silver, gold, right? And then, after that, it would be, that's it. Like, everything else is going to be limited no matter what you do. There's nothing else that, Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that, brother. All right. Your microphone sounds good, Simon. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, man. Because sometimes I wonder, like the connections, like I don't have the greatest connection here, and hopefully I will have internet soon. We have just, this is how like remote that I live. I didn't realize when I bought the house that there was no internet connection out here. They only had dial-up, and it was incredibly slow, and everybody complained about it. So the only internet connection I really had was just my cell phone itself and the data use. So hopefully this week we will have some high-speed internet, and maybe I'll start doing some different things, like from the house, or whatever. I don't know. You can participate in the system and use it to your benefit. Just remain vigilant and on certain things. Spend your money wisely and don't get caught up in everyday BS. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Pinching pennies. And see, that's just the thing. Like, I know there's no hiding, right? I know, like, my phone tracks me. I know it listens. I know it does all that stuff, right? That's why I use Telegram communication with my wife. Right? Telegram encrypted communication. I use it regularly. Like, we never use anything else other than that, right, for our communications. And our communications are very typical of what a husband and wife communication would be. Can you stop and pick up some bread on the way home? Yeah, no problem, right? Hey, when's Freddie's practice? Right? All that stuff. It's, but that's our private messages. This is our communications to ourselves, right? This isn't something that I'm trying to put out there on the internet for everybody to see, and then, worried about whether or not they're tracking and tracing me and all that other stuff. I don't care about that. I've already put out everything that I need to, like, I can't hide, right? Like, it's all out there now. I don't, whatever, But those communications, those are private, right? That means something to me. And I don't want anybody or any algorithm or anything else being able to just read it and do whatever they want with that communication. That's not for them. So I take that very seriously, and I think other people should as well. It doesn't have to be every single communication I do, but it does have to be the ones that I find, to be private, and that's one of them. All right, Simon, you are a machine, hardest working man on YouTube. Well, thank you, Benny. I'm gonna probably give it like another 20 minutes, and then we're gonna start getting ready for Freddie's birthday party. I like my gold and silver, but more important in the meantime is lead and brass for sure. Yeah, I just, the thing about it is that living in that sort of like thought is the problem. See, like, here's the thing. When you want to manifest good things into your reality, then you have to have a belief and a feeling in which that you have already acquired those things, right? And so when you take on this idea, it's just like, no, I need to load up on bullets and guns and get prepared, and I need to do this on a vigilant manner where I'm always this way and ready and willing and all this other stuff to be a participant in the next revolution or whatever. I mean, however you want to look at it. That's like, that's the universal expectations that will then bring that kind of experience to your life, right? So this is what you'll see. This is what you will experience. You will have things that are involved around that. And whether or not that's something like, I mean, who knows? That might be actually something that's a benefit to you. You might be like a gunsmith or, maybe a self-defense trainer or something of that nature. Like, I mean, then that's just your life, right? But me personally, like, I don't think about it like that because I'm thinking of things that I would rather do that are not involved with things like that, right? Like, I don't want that kind of thing in my life, right? I mean, believe me, I mean, I know how to use firearms. I'm really good at it. And it's probably one of the reasons why I didn't join the military, because I wasn't really good at getting good grades. Like, I wasn't very smart, and I could shoot a rifle really well. So there was probably one thing that I was going to end up doing, and I didn't want to participate in that sort of thing. So, like, having the ability and then hoping that you never have to use it. In fact, not even thinking about using it, just having the ability to do it is good. Right, in my opinion, because now you can live in the feeling of abundance and wealth and, investments and knowledge and all the other stuff that is actually benefiting your life in a positive manner, as opposed to this, man, I got to protect myself kind of manner. Not saying that you shouldn't, just saying, one of them you grow and prosper, the other one you're kind of stagnant in. Okay, Dixter, that totally depends on what you're trying to get out of an investment. Okay. Silver is a terrible investment. Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's more of a good insurance policy. Speculation. It's not an investment. Investment is something that pays you. Like, just think about an investment. Investing, it means, like, I intend on getting something back out of this. You invest in a business. The business is going to operate. It's going to grow. It's going to do well. You get paid, right? And that's an investment. You buy dividend-paying stocks, right? The company does well. It pays out on it. You get, once a quarter or whatever, you get paid from it. You have a rental property, right? The rental income pays you, a monthly return. U.S. Treasuries, it's like a loan to the government that has a monthly payment to it. These are all interest-bearing, payment-bearing, returning items, right? Stuff that you purchase and then you see something coming back from it. That's an investment, right? When you buy a chunk of gold, when you buy Bitcoin, when you buy a speculative item like that, what you are intending on doing is selling it into the future for a higher price, right? So at some point, somebody along the line is going to say, hey, man, I'll give you more than what you paid for it, right? That's not an investment. That's a speculation. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you're intending on doing with it. Some people just want to be away from a third-party claim. If you have cash, you've got a third-party claim. That's a liability of the Federal Reserve, right? So it's due back to the Federal Reserve. It's a claim ticket. It's a debt issuance. It's an IOU, right? That's not a real physical item. It's, somebody's paper promise, just like anything else is out there. That's not a physical item. So when you have a physical item like silver, you actually have something that is benefiting you because you don't have a claim ticket to, somebody else's promise to pay. It's your personal wealth that's secured within your own protection, right? And that is very unique. So yeah, it serves a purpose. In fact, it serves a higher purpose, in my opinion, to the investment, because the investment means that you have to have trust out there. With silver, you don't have to have trust. Yeah. All right, let's check this out. We got Harrison with $21. Thank you so much for the super chat, man. You guys are very generous today. Thank you. It's all about gaining absolute power or control. All the lies, all the confusion, all the BS, all the violence, overt and covert. Yeah, I agree that it's it really is all about power and control. I mean, I can totally, totally go with that. And I do think about like what it is that the future has for us when you think about like all the digital aspects of where it is that our world is headed to, right? Everything's going to get tokenized, everything's going to end up on a computer screen. There's going to be very little cash transactions going into the future. I mean, there's still plenty of it happening, and it will continue to happen for a very long time, but it's going to diminish, over time, and it's going to get, ever increasingly, further and further away from a common use. And we're going to move ever increasingly more into digital forms of transactions. And we've talked about this many times. I mean, even just like, I go down to the Sunday market, which is supposed to be like the local community sharing handmade items and locally grown food and stuff like that. And nobody's going to take, I mean, you might find a couple of people who might take silver. Hardly anybody's going to take gold and give you change for it. Everybody will take cash, and certainly everybody will take your debit card. And so you think about like Gresham's law, it just chases gold right out. Even cash is less valuable down there than say a credit card transactions, because they don't even really want to deal with cash. They'd just much rather deal with a credit card, or a Venmo payment or something like that. All right, I just made 20% in gold futures. That's a bad. Well, okay, so wait a minute. That's different though, right? Because what you're doing is you were doing something that's not the physical item, and that's different. And so you can make money off of a move, right? If you are, again, speculating on the idea of it, and you can leverage that idea. And there's a lot of ways that you can actually make quite a bit of money off of that move. But that's not necessarily the same as taking physical silver, taking physical possession. Right? So again, you're on a third-party claim doing the futures trading, where physical holdings is not the third-party claim. It's the insurance policy part of it. So yeah, it's very different. You can also invest in silver miners, right? Gold miners. It's another way to invest in precious metals, and it's actually an investment, so do you absolutely believe that everybody should be a concealed carry permit? Absolutely not. In fact, I don't believe anybody should be a concealed carry permit. I believe exactly the opposite of that, right? And this is really where I think a lot of times the idea of constitution is really misunderstood, especially when people say that I have a right, and then not knowing exactly what that right is. Now, I don't knock anybody for getting a concealed weapons permit, right? If you got one, if you have it, if you went and did it, that's like, hey, that's your business. That's why you got your reasonings behind it. Now, I think about what it is that I already have a right to do, right? See, I already have a right to bear arms. I don't ask for permission to something I already have a right to do. And I don't really have a need to carry a concealed weapon. In fact, I don't even want to carry a gun to begin with, whether it's open carry or concealed. I just don't have any desire to do that. Now, if I was out in the woods, mushroom picking or something like that, because we're in the Pacific Northwest, and, chanterelles and cauliflower mushrooms and lobster mushrooms and stuff like that grow like in a mass abundance around here. So it's a big hobby for a lot of people, is to go mushroom picking. Well, bears also and cougars and stuff like that live in the woods. And if you're not out there hunting deer, then you don't have any protection. Carrying a firearm is a pretty smart thing to do, especially when you're out in the woods. So in that sense, like open carry firearm, I'm totally cool with it, right? I'm in total need for whatever. But when I'm in the grocery store, I don't want to see it. Like, I mean, that's just me personally. I'm just not into like looking at firearms. I don't think this is like, a place in which that I want to see it. Like, I don't have a problem with it. Yeah, I don't care if you carry it. And it's just like I see it, and I don't have a big deal with it. But I also know that City Ordinance 5.010 clearly dictates that the open carry of a loaded firearm is illegal in Astoria. It has to be unloaded. You can transfer your firearm from one place to another. You can open carry it all day long, but it's not meant to be loaded, right? Or you're not supposed to have it loaded. Now, I know the legalities behind it, and I'm not trying to say, hey, Constitution, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's not for me to defend, right? I can open carry a firearm anywhere I go in this nation. There is no law that can prevent me from doing that, but whether or not it's loaded can be prevented, right? There is laws that can prevent that from being taking place, but they can't stop me from carrying my firearm. I know this. Okay, let's go back to this firearm concealed carry thing. When you go and get a concealed carry, when you go and get a concealed carry permit, what are you asking for? Permission, meaning you don't have a right. So you are now going to them saying, I don't have a right. Can I please sign a piece of paper that gives me permission? Are you relinquishing your right? Because I have a right. I retain my rights. Like, I don't ask for permission. Like, they don't even give me my rights. I tell them what my rights are. Right? Because my authority is above theirs, especially when it comes to the constitutional rights. And the right to bear arms sits above all the government, sits above all the authority, it sits above everybody out there. Nobody can tell me that I can or cannot do this, right? Because it's not there. They don't give me a right. Like, government doesn't issue that. I already retain it. It's mine first. And so I don't go to government and say, hey, can I please carry a firearm? Because apparently I don't have a right, and I'll sign my name to this piece of paper that asks for permission to do something that I already have a right to do. So now when I get pulled over, I have to tell this police officer something. I had a right to remain silent. Now I don't even have a right to remain silent to a police officer when he pulls me over because I have a permit, because I asked for permission? What happened here? I'm losing my rights like crazy by asking for a concealed weapons permit. You see what's going on here? This is why I don't trust this. I'm a true constitutionalist, guys. Like, people don't realize this about me. This is one of the reasons why I just don't give a shit about politics anymore. It's because there's not one single person in politics who cares about your constitutional rights. You know that, right? In fact, there is nobody out there who cares about your constitutional rights except for you. And nobody cares about their constitutional rights. Spit out the Bill of Rights to me, right? Freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, the right not to have to quarter troops unless they're in time of war, right? The right to be, here you go, the Fourth Amendment. The rights of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects from unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the places to be searched and the persons and things to be seized. Show me the warrant. Show me a signed warrant. Don't just go get some stupid warrant. Show me where a judge has signed that warrant. Right? Because the cops can go get warrants. They can show you, I got a warrant, okay, I got a warrant. Yeah, where is it signed? If it's signed, I'll put my hands up over here on my head and I'll sit in the middle of the floor because you guys got to do what you're going to do and you're going to kick that door in. If you have a warrant, right? See, I get fired up when I talk about this stuff because I'm very serious about it. Very few people that I know are that serious. All-Nighter is. All-Nighter's a serious dude. He gets this stuff, right? I don't know if he necessarily thought about the, the concealed weapon permit thing like that, but, when I was looking into it, I'm like, I don't ask for permission. I don't sign my name to anything. Like, I mean, I had to in order to get a driver's license because I don't have the statement of origin for my vehicle. See, if I had a statement of origin for my vehicle, then I wouldn't need a driver's license. I wouldn't need insurance. I wouldn't need any of that stuff. But I don't have the manufacturer's statement of origin. What I have is a certificate of title. It certifies that there's a title out there. See, it's not the title. The title, the statement of origin, that went to the state. They took a photo of it, destroyed it, put it on microfilm. Now you have to register your vehicle. You have to carry insurance. You have to have a driver's license because they're now invested in that vehicle as well. They actually carry the title, not you. You have a certificate. Something that certifies that there is a title out there. Now, if I had the manufacturer's statement of origin to my vehicle, it's as if you had the birth certificate to your vehicle. It's your property. They don't have any interest in it whatsoever. And when you get pulled over, unless that person who's pulling you over is a judge, juror, and execution, this doesn't constitute due process. You can't take my stuff from me. All right? The right not to have to incriminate yourself. The right not to have to, or the rights of the accused in a criminal case. The rights of the accused in a civil case. Cruel and unusual punishment. You have rights that are not specifically enumerated in the Constitution. There's rights that, supersede government law. All this stuff, like, people don't know this stuff. And it's sad because if they did, they wouldn't vote for the people that we voted for. It wouldn't look anything like that. Right? So people were like, you have to vote. For what? For that? For this? This unconstitutional horse shit? Hell no. I'll pass. Thanks, man. I'll pass. Our last shot that we had at it was Ron Paul, and even then I was just like, okay, yeah, this is a long shot. So all government has been utterly corrupt. Most people just don't realize it because they work very hard to hide it, and it's worked very well. Yeah, I totally agree. Harrison, right on. Yeah. I went down the sovereign route. It's a bad idea. Do what the government says, or they will kill or put you in a cage. That's how it really works. Clear gray sky. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I know people who live the sovereign way, and I don't think they live completely the sovereign way. I'm telling you, their life ain't that great. Like, I don't know a single one of them that's like living like George Gammon lives. Just saying. I mean, they no, not like that. It's quite the opposite of that. All right. So I don't necessarily want to go that route. I want to go and do the things like George Gammon and Ken McElroy and Jason Hartman and all the rest of the rebel capitalist crew is doing. Like, not that. I mean, I want to do that. Not what the sovereign guys are doing. Like, not saying that I don't believe in the whole sovereign movement. Like, I totally agree with it. Like, I am very passionate about the whole idea of constitutional rights and everything else. But we are so far gone from it that there is no way. Like, and, unless somebody can pick up the Constitution and bust it out and start reading it and then hold the politicians accountable for it, and there ain't nothing that's going to change. All political power flows from the barrel of a gun. Wow, yeah. And the government has lots of guns. Simon, stay you. I have watched you for 2 years. Preach, brother. Well, thank you, Matt. Sovs are misguided. No, I mean, I can see where in a lot of ways people would see that, but also I don't agree. Like, I think that a lot of people who are asleep to the whole sovereign movement, or maybe have just looked at them as a bunch of wacko conspiracy theorists, have really missed it, right? Because I think there's a lot of how do I put this? Credence, you know. All right, Bob, thank you for joining the channel. You're really going to enjoy some of the speeches that we cover. We are going to be covering a recent speech, I think, given by Michelle Bowman. There's a really, really good inflation expectation doesn't create inflation argument that has come out of the Federal Reserve a few years ago. And I really want to break this thing down, but it's really long and it's really complicated and it's full of Fed speak. And so it's really difficult to wrap your head around some of this stuff. But it's a really interesting argument. And I would really like to cover that in one of the member-only streams, because really, without inflation expectation creating inflation, it kind of blows the whole strategy and argument that I have been pushing here with the monetary policy strategy for the low neutral interest rate world and everything else that's being said. It kind of throws that argument out the window. So I'd really like to break this thing down and really see it. I mean, does inflation expectation create inflation? This guy is saying hell no, and he is really adamant about it too. Like, I mean, he's basically calling you a moron if you don't believe that inflation expectation creates inflation. So I'm digging it. Like, I'm like, okay, man, like I'm on that camp. So I mean, yeah, here, like, you're basically calling me out for it. So I really want to see what's in this thing that he has to say. Now, again, I still, like, what I've gotten into it is very intriguing, but I don't necessarily, gonna believe that inflation expectation doesn't create inflation. You'll really enjoy the members videos. Yeah, you will. And there's plenty of them to go through. So, it's $1 a month, but we've got plenty of member only videos that we have already, streamed and done. I try to do one a week. I was going to do one today, but we got this party and I didn't know how long this stream was actually going to be able to go for. So not to make excuses, but I had a concealed carry in Washington State. It good for 5 years. If you choose to conceal carry, that is your right, but it's like you said, it can't be loaded. The military has more A-10 than the civilian. There are more civilians that are armed than military. Perception is reality. What I was taught in the Navy, what people believe is happening to them. Yes. Well, here's the thing, like manifesting your realities and putting it into the world, whatever it is that you believe, you can manifest that into creation. So like here's the thing. I'm not a public speaker. I've never took a public speaking class. I don't know anything about public speaking, but a long time ago I thought it would be cool in my head. Like I had it in my head that it would be cool to be able to go up on stage and speak in front of people, right? I have no idea how that was going to happen. Like I didn't even really plan for it to happen. I just thought it would be cool to do it. And I always kind of saw myself as being somebody who could do that or who was going to do that. In fact, it got to the point that I thought about it so much that I didn't really see it any other way. And so when I eventually was asked to go up on stage in Houston to speak in front of 800 people as my very first speaking engagement in front of all these super elite people, what I thought, or what are, in a lot of ways, this prestigious group, right? I was just like, holy crap, how in the world did I even get here, right? But subconsciously, if you feel it, it will just lead you in that direction. If you feel that you are limited, you will be limited in life. If you feel that there is an abundance and you just have an abundance of it going on in your life, regardless if you do or don't, you just feel that you do, it will naturally occur. Like the energies that you put out there will just, in the subconscious behaviors, the tonalities of your voice, the words that you use, the position of your body language, all the stuff that you put out there, the universe recognizes that and then starts reflecting what it is that you are feeling on the inside. I figured it out. Like, I mean, because I could not figure out what was going on. Like, how is it that, like, it felt like something had grabbed a hold of me and it was shoving me forward? Like, I didn't have any control over what was happening, right? But I did have control over what it was that I was thinking and feeling. And I was thinking, although I was nervous and scared and didn't know if I could do it, I was thinking and feeling, man, you are a public speaker. You are going to be on stage giving your information out to groups of people at some point in your life. Like I felt that on the inside. I didn't think anything else other than, yeah, someday that will happen. And the universe occurred that way. This is one of the important reasons. Like it's not necessarily important to go and attempt to try and acquire a bunch of money. What's important is to feel that a bunch of money is available to you. The world is full of it. Money flies everywhere. All you have to do is just reach out there and grab it, right? And you got to figure out how that works, how you're able to get out there and grab it. Sometimes you can only grab a single dollar at a time, but once you can grab $1, you can grab two, and then four, and then eight, and then so on, and pretty soon you're doing quite well. Right? It's like the magic of it all really comes down to just literally what you are thinking and feeling. Right? If you feel you are limited, you will be limited. If you feel like you're in abundance, you will have an abundance. It all comes down to what it is that you are thinking and feeling. All right. A person always remembers how you made them feel no matter the situation. Yeah. I fried chicken wings in olive oil. That's good. A-10 Warhog, only plane ever built around a machine gun. Yeah, those are pretty badass planes, all right. It's the basis of magic, makes people believe something, and that is their reality. Big business knows it and takes advantage of it. Absolutely. That's why it's really important to, to be very aware of what it is that you're thinking and feeling at all the time, right? And it doesn't matter, like, even if you're not saying anything to anybody, like you're just sitting in a room all by yourself, just like not saying anything to anybody, you're not giving anybody a hard time, you're not whatever, but they'll know that you're not feeling well, or if you're feeling good, like just by the way you're just sitting there, just your demeanor of it, right? By carrying that higher energy, carrying that higher vibe energy, that open, like communication type of energy, like that, not standoffish, not grumpy, not negative, not any of that stuff, but positive, encouraging, open. You don't have to be running around like an idiot or something like that, but just to be in that general high energy, high vibration will end up bringing a world of abundance to you, right? It's just like kind of naturally occurs in that way. And it's just like, you see some people, it's just like, man, that guy's lucky, right? He's not lucky. He just knows how to just carry himself in a higher vibration that has, that has stuff that comes flowing to him. All right. You guys just want to talk about warplanes, huh? A lawnmower is a good investment. Yeah, it is. All right. I'm curious as to what implications to understand from your expo of the real strategy of making us think inflation is higher. I'm curious as to what implications to understand from your expo of their real strategy of making us think high inflation is higher. Like, what is the reasonings for them doing it? Okay, so the problem that they were facing was a neutral interest rate that was too low. Like here, low neutral interest rates reflect a culmination of trends extending back 25 years. A quarter century ago, a typical estimate of the neutral interest rate in the United States was 2 to 2.5%, consistent with historical averages over the preceding half century. Since then, however, there has been a clear downward trend in the neutral interest rate in the United States and other advanced economies, with current estimates ranging from 0 to 1.5%. So now the neutral interest rate is 0 to 1.5%, right? At least that's what it was in 2018. I think that it's risen since then, but nobody knows exactly where the neutral interest rate is. Point being is that right there, 0 to 1.5% on the neutral interest rate meant that the Federal Reserve couldn't stimulate the economy anymore. It was just over. It was just like dropping of interest rates wasn't going to work. So they knew they had to fix this, right? They had to fix that problem right there. And the problem with it is that inflation expectation was persistently too low. So if they could raise the inflation expectation, they will start to be able to raise the neutral interest rate, which then in turn will then be able to give them the ability to stimulate the economy with the adjustment of interest rates. See, right now, the adjustment of interest rates just doesn't work. It's like a failed concept, right? The idea of it works. Like people believe that the adjustment of interest rates works, but the Federal Reserve knows that that machine is broken, right? It's just like, it's just like, don't tell them it's broken, but it's broken. And the idea that it works still is functioning within the economy like the gold machine functions, right? It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. It doesn't really work. It's not existing, but people don't know that. They have the credible threat belief that it does work. So with that, if you can raise the inflation expectation and keep that elevated, you can begin to raise that neutral interest rate, which will then give the Federal Reserve that monetary policy power back. So the longer this goes on, the more effective adjusting interest rates will be. But it takes time. It takes a lot of time with elevated inflation expectations. And I couldn't tell you, is it going to be 6 months or a year or 6 years? Or 20 years. I mean, I couldn't tell you. It's been a very long time that the low neutral interest rate environment has existed, and them trying to figure out how it is that they plan on raising this thing outside of using inflation expectations. I couldn't tell you, because all I can see is that all it comes down to is inflation expectations. And as long as they can keep that elevated, right, then that's what they're looking for, right? That's like their goal. They have low unemployment, right, 4% or whatever it is. They have inflation that is moderately above 2%, which is exactly in line with their monetary policy that they had stated years ago and then reiterated just recently. So moderately above 2% inflation, perfectly in line with their mandate. Or not their mandate. Well, yeah, I guess their mandate, right? Because they're mandated for low and stable prices. And if they have a monetary policy that says they are shooting for moderately above 2% for some time, then I guess they are achieving that part of the mandate. And they're achieving the mandate of employment as well. Low and stable prices and low and full employment. Like, the Fed is winning. Like, I don't understand. People say that the Fed has failed, and I don't understand. Like, to me, it looks like they are totally getting it. Like, nobody knows that. They don't admit it. They don't want everybody to say it, but that's exactly what's happening here. They're totally getting it. And again, it's part of gaslighting, right? Is to have everybody convinced that the Fed is screwed up. All right, the rest of the world cuts their interest rates so they can buy U.S. bonds for their retirement funds. The Fed has been failing for decades. Yeah. I mean, failing, I love that, failing, right? But yet, how long does it take to fail? Does it take 20 years to fail, 50 years to fail, 100 years to fail? Does it fail next week, next month, next year, 6 years from now? When does it fail? Like, and the Fed already. It's like, it ain't going to fail. It ain't going to fail because everybody is still using the dollar around the world. When they stop using the dollar, then the Fed will fail. All right. And I understand there's plenty of BRICS nations and all these people who are trying to get out of the dollar. The dollar is so far from failure when it comes to a world reserve currency. Like, like all you have to do is just point at the second place. Just point at second place, and then you can show me where the dollar's failing. There is no second place. Like, second place is so far away. Like, it is like second place is where? Like, you need, like, you can't even see it. Like, the curvature of the earth hides second place. That's how far away they are. You can't even see them. That's how far away. If I wasn't listening to the crash mongering, I would be in my dream home, no mortgage. Jimmy Hat, I agree, man. Like, I was in total fear that I was going to not be able to be in a house. Like, I was in fear of going underwater on my house. I was in fear of all the stuff, like crashing economy, all the things. I'm now in a house that has, well, almost 120 something $1,000 in equity now after my down payment and everything. Like 100, like that's how much it's gone up. Like, I am so far from underwater. Like, I don't even, people are like, dude, you bought a house at its height and now you're regretting it. And they have all these, like, crash bro statements all over I just laugh so hard. And I'm thinking, man, if I didn't buy this house, like, this represents like, I don't know, probably 3/4 of my net worth. And it happened in 2 years. And I'm thinking, man, screw you guys. I don't know what to say, man. I didn't want to buy the house. I had the idea that it was going to, be all the bad things in the economy. You guys taking off? Yeah. All right. I love you guys. All right. I guess we're hanging out a little longer. I had all that feelings. Like, I did not want to participate in the housing market at the time because I thought once the interest rates go up, I'm going to lose my house and it's all going to be, it's going to be the end of the world for me. The complete opposite took place. And I don't care what anybody says that, that I'm second guessing it, I'm lying or whatever. They're wrong, man. They're absolutely wrong. I would tell you. I mean, I would just straight up tell you. And it's not the case. Like, I can't believe how awesome it ended up working out for me, considering how bad I thought the situation was going to be. I mean, it took everything out of me. You guys watched the videos. I mean, literally, it took, all the money that I had. I had $300 left in my checking account when I wrote the down payment for the house. Like, I had $300 left. That's it, to my name. Like, and it didn't make me feel uncomfortable to be there because that's the way I had been my entire life. So it wasn't bad to be there. It just couldn't believe that this was happening. Like, I couldn't believe that I couldn't find a place to live. There was no place to rent. I was being forced into buying a house. I thought I was being forced into buying a house at the height of the market. I believed all that stuff. Right? And I had never been happier with any decision I've ever made. Never been happier. Right? I couldn't believe it. It worked out completely different from what I thought was going to happen. Congrats. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It was hard. It was like, and what's funny about it is, as I was telling Lumberjack Landlord that story, and he basically, he told me, it was just like, dude, I felt like that when I bought my first house and when I bought the 40th house. He says it doesn't go away. The high anxiety, the what if, all the stuff that goes along with it, he says that never goes away. He says after about 40 houses, he says you kind of get used to it. But he says up until then, he says every one of them going up there, he says he felt the exact same way every time, right? So it's just the way it is. Like, anybody who is in fear of buying a house, just understand that you are going to be carrying high anxiety with it. Just don't I don't know, like, I'm not trying to give advice out there on whether or not you should go out and buy a house because, hey, it's up to everybody. Like, if I had listened to me, I wouldn't have done it. I felt like I was forced into it. Like, it tore me up. In fact, I had lost lots of sleep over it. All right, David Lamb, thank you so much for the $1.99. How this information benefit us? How I plan ahead? Okay, so here's the thing, David. You're nobody's going to be able to tell you what it is that you need to do in your life. Like, I like, people say, how come you don't go out and buy a new car? I can't buy a new car. I'm buying a house, right? If I wasn't buying a house, I'd go buy a new Camaro, but I can't buy a new Camaro because I'm buying a house. Nobody knows what it is that I need in my life. You can't tell me that, yeah, you can afford a Camaro. I know I could go out and get one. I could go out and make the payments right now, right? I could probably do that, but I'm not going to do that because I have a lot of history in making up to do from the fact that I was screwing up for so many years, right? This is my personal journey that I am on. What I do with my money is going to be very different from what you do with yours, right? You're listening to that going like, man, I don't have any of that stuff going on in my life, right? Yeah, I know, right? Nobody knows what you have going on. Nobody knows what they have got going on. So this is really where the information starts to benefit you, is when you start to internalize it for yourself. When you start seeing the information for yourself in your own view. Gresham's law, right? Understanding how it is that bad money chases out good. And then understanding Thier's law. What happens when the current currency completely collapses and the good currency comes in and chases out the bad. Gresham's law, Thier's law, internalize them. Think about them existing today. Think about how they were, how Gresham thought about this back in the 1500s, and think about how you can see it today down there at the Sunday market, watching how nobody's going to be using gold because it's really the good currency, actually going all the way to the very bad currency being the most common form, using digital, right? This is Gresham's law in current form right here, in real time. Think about Triffin's dilemma. Think about like how it is, and internalize the idea that the United States has the world reserve currency. How do they get that currency out there to the world? You got to be able to provide the world with the dollars because they have written so many debts that are due in dollars. The demand for dollars will skyrocket if you do not provide them with that money. How do you do that? Well, you got to be in deficit trade, meaning that you import more than you export. You import stuff and you export dollars. Now, this is something that is taking place right now. You can see the fighting for trade positions going on with China and how they are attempting to, deal with the fact that they have a manufacturing base that's attempting to find its way out of China and into the rest of the world, and they're combating that idea. They're doing their best to prevent that from happening. This is all leading into things like the bullwhip effect, where you have the oversupply, undersupply. Right now, they are going to oversupply the entire world with solar panels and cars and appliances and everything else to destroy the manufacturing base of the other competitors around the world, right? You can see this if you follow Gresham's law, Thier's law, Triffin's dilemma, the bullwhip effect, and then go into the Cantillon essay, right? Again, this is the Cantillon essay. There's a link to this down in the description of this video. It's an Amazon affiliate link, so if you buy the essay from the Amazon affiliate link, I will get a little commission off of that, but you don't have to buy the essay from the Amazon affiliate link. You can get the essay for free at the Mises Institute. All you have to do is type in Cantillon essay on economic theory, right? And you will find the essay for free at the Mises Institute. However, by following that Amazon affiliate link, if you don't buy the essay, anything you put in your cart after clicking on that link, I will also get a commission for the next 24 hours. So just go buy whatever you want. You don't have to buy the essay. Just go do some Amazon shopping and I will get a little commission off of it. So thank you for listening to that little plug. Now, the Cantillon theory, right? The Cantillon effect. This is where the money starts pouring in and starts driving the wedge between the rich and the poor. It drives out the domestic manufacturers, drives in ever-increasing amounts of foreign production. This is going to take place no matter what you do, right? Unless you live in some sort of socialist country that prevents you from spending money on foreign imports, moving into luxuries, a higher standard of living, limits the amount of production that you can do. If you do not have some sort of socialist aspect to your nation, you will suffer the consequences of the Cantillon effect, guaranteed, right? In fact, you'll probably suffer it anyway because it's an economic force that is underlying no matter what you do if you're a government trying to prevent it. So understand those four economic theories. Again, Gresham's law, Triffin's dilemma, the bullwhip effect, and the Cantillon effect, right? Learn those four theories, internalize them, recognize them for today. You know, find examples of them in the news articles that you read. Go out there and try and like establish an idea that everything that you see out there has an economic force underlying that is pushing that, right? Once you see it that way, you will then naturally, intuitively be making decisions in the right direction that is in line with what it is that you need for your life. Because again, nobody knows what it is that you need. But if you can follow those four economic theories or recognize those four economic theories when you're reading articles, when you're out there doing your daily business, when you're, just experiencing life in general, you're going to find that you're going to start making decisions that are much more appropriate and much more done with much more confidence, right? Within it, because you'll see and recognize exactly what it is that's happening out there. The only reason why you would almost even ask the question is because of the uncertainty, right? Like that's why all of us are here. We're all like, trying to figure out what it is that's going on. The more I dove into economics to put these videos together, the more I started realizing and putting this strategies together and start diving into these old economic theories that I was able to start piecing it together and really feel like I am cracking the code on it. Like I really feel like if you start with those four economic theories, that will unlock the door into how the economy is really working, because you can take government out of it, you can take environment out of it, you can take all this stuff out of it, and then go down to the heart of the economic forces that are at play, and then everything else can start being built off of those, because then you will start recognizing what it is that is happening here, why they're issuing those tariffs, why it is that they are subsidizing, why it is that we have, trade deficits and stuff like that. Like it all starts to start lining up and making sense, because when you see these things and people say, well, why are they doing that? You can be like, well, that's Triffin's dilemma, or that's Gresham's law, or that's, the bullwhip effect taking place. Or if you understood Cantillon's, the Cantillon effect, you would see that this is actually causing the new money to come in and separating the rich from the poor. And once you start finding these things and you recognize them, you can start seeing overlapping. Like you'll read an article and you'll be like, this is a combination of like two or three of these things, or maybe even all four of them, for whatever reason. All right, Matt, thank you so much for the $2. All right, inflation is 900. That gets interest rate attached to it. The irony of a guy living in a van giving advice to a guy on the internet for $1.99. Well, the Downs guy, I don't live in a van. I live in a house. I don't give advice on the internet. I give my opinion. I don't try to justify, what it is that I know. I've already proven myself through my efforts, through my experiences, and through time that I am more than qualified to share my opinion like anybody else is. I've been on stage, I've spoken with, high level people. I've been to 3 different types of economic conferences. I've called out lumber more accurately than anybody, right? Like, I mean, all that stuff, that's just the simple things that I've done. And it's not ironic. It's actually probably better that you get economic information from somebody who is actually standing on the ground with you than somebody who is flying 30,000 feet in the air, who have no idea what you got going on in your life. They have no idea how it is to live like that, right? It wasn't that long ago that I struggled to buy a gallon of milk, right? It wasn't that long ago. I still have those feelings. I know what it's like to not be able to do that for your family. It doesn't feel good at all, right? And now the difference between being inconvenienced by having a delayed Uber as opposed to not being able to provide some necessities to your family for a couple of days because you don't get paid until Friday is a huge difference in frustrations that are occurring within the people when they view the economy. They don't recognize that stuff, right? I know what that feels like. It doesn't even feel that far away from me. You know? And so, like, being able to recognize the economy, being able to recognize these economic forces for what they are, it can span everything. Span religions, it'll span ages, it'll span wealth, wealth divides, it'll all that. Right? But you have to be able to recognize it for what it is and not throw blame, right? I mean, there's plenty of blame. There's all kinds of blame, right? We can blame everything all day long. It doesn't, but that doesn't help anything. What time is it? 10 o'clock, everybody bailed. I better plug this thing in. You guys want to hang out for longer or what? We got 200 people watching, 116 likes. If you guys want to hang out for a little while longer, let's get the likes up to 165. If we can get 165 and then by the time we get to an hour and a half into this, I'll stick around. Otherwise, we'll bail out and go find something else to do with our day. But let me plug this in for the minute here. Oh, I got the wrong one. Where's it? Oh, it's right here. In other words, it's not real value. It's just interest. All right. Inflation is caused by putting money into the system. Inflation was caused by the stimulus in QE. Now it's more greed inflation. Banks been doing the exact same thing for centuries. So, okay, Jay Luther, I will agree with a lot of the stuff that you say because that's kind of the common narrative that's out there. And it does make a lot of sense when you think about it in the fashion that if you add the quantity of money to the system, you're going to find an inflationary pressure being built from that. Okay, all that stuff I agree with, but I disagree with the sense that price increases is not caused by the increase of money. All right. Now, it's caused by the increase in consumption. And that is very important to understand because when you understand it from the increase in consumption point of view, now you can recognize why it is that quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 failed to produce the inflationary scenario that the Federal Reserve was looking for. Again, it doesn't really matter if we saw inflation or if we didn't. Right? What matters is for the monetary policy did not see inflationary scenarios taking place after the quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the expansion of the balance sheet from $850 billion to $4.5 trillion. So now, really, what is taking place that causes inflation is the increase in consumption. So when new money comes into the system, just because it comes in, it has to come in at all channels at once, increasing consumption simultaneously amongst everybody in order to have an inflationary scenario take place amongst all items. Now, we experienced that here just recently, but it had more to do with the severing of the supply chain and a stimulus package that came out. If the stimulus package had come out by itself, it would have caused a flash in the pan inflation. We might have seen some prices go up, but for the most part, we wouldn't have seen it sustained and we wouldn't have seen it as dramatically as we had if it wasn't due to the fact that we had a severed supply chain and items were not traveling through the system. If you do have a supply-demand imbalance, you will also have price increases, and that's what we were experiencing during the pandemic. That's what caused the price increases, was the supply-demand imbalances. It will always cause the cause the price increases, supply and demand. Now, here, for example, let's just take it back just a little bit and just kind of examine the idea again, all right? Let's take my little town, for example, all right? And if there wasn't a severing of the supply chain, there was all the supply was available and everybody got that stimulus check and they ran down to the grocery store and they started buying up their favorite things, how much toilet paper would you actually think they would buy? Probably the same amount that they bought last month. There would be zero increase in the demand for toilet paper, because nobody's going to buy any more toilet paper than what they need because there is no expectations that there is going to be a shortage of them. But if you have an expectation of shortage or you simply can't find it, then you're going to pay a higher price and you're going to buy as much as you can. But if you had a stimulus check handed to you and you go into town and you're ready to spend this money and you're not going to spend it on toilet paper, where would you spend it? Well, you'd probably spend it down at the bar, right? Or you'd probably go down and buy a new car. Or you'd probably go down and buy some exercise equipment or some of the other funny things that you would enjoy that nobody really wants, right? And that's what you would end up spending your money on. If everybody else had that same idea, then guess what? all of a sudden the prices on those things would be moving up because that's where the demand for the money went to. It didn't go into toilet paper unless there is a issue with the supply of toilet paper. That's what caused the inflation. So you have to understand it, because if you can't explain why quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 failed to produce the inflationary scenario, then you can't call out quantitative easing for creating inflation. You can't do that because there was a whole expansion of the balance sheet that quadrupled the money supply that didn't do inflation, that didn't cause the inflation scenario. And if you can't explain it, then it's going to be very difficult to then explain how it is that inflation took place this time around. Right? Because you're going to say, well, it's money printer. And then I can say, okay, how come it didn't work the first time? And you'd be like, oh, right? That doesn't work. You can't do it that way. You have to be able to explain it from all fashions. The reason why quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 failed to produce the inflationary scenario is because most of that money ended up on the big banks' balance sheets. And unless that money was lent into the system, it wasn't chasing goods and services. It just sat there doing nothing. So if all this money sits in a bank, it doesn't matter how much you print. It's got to be out there chasing the goods and services. And if it's not being lent into the system, then it's not getting out there. And the things that it is being lent to, you did see move up in price. Houses, cars, bonds, stocks, all the things that people borrow money to buy, right? But all the standard of living stuff didn't go up, not like what the Federal Reserve was looking for. Let's pump the likes here. Okay, we got 148. I don't know. Okay, I'll give you 4 more minutes to get it up to 165. We're at 150 right now. That is if you want me to hang out. Otherwise, we'll go and figure out something else to do with the day. All right, Simon, would you please explain again why the fact of the Fed's policy switching to average inflation targeting in August of 2020 implies that they will not be cutting rates the way that everyone seems to believe that they will be. Well, I mean, okay, so back in August of 2020, let me just kind of clear this up a little bit. If we go back, is this thing working? Okay, let me turn this on. Let's go back to that speech real quick, because it is very telling of what it is that the Federal Reserve was experiencing. Hold on 1 second here, guys. Okay, here we go. So this is Powell's speech given August 27th of 2020, right? And now if we go back and we just kind of cruise up here, I'm going to just give the title of the speech again real quick so you guys can go look it up for yourself. The title of the speech is New Economic Challenges in the Fed's Monetary Policy Review. Now, I don't want to read this whole speech because it is quite long, but if I just back it up just a little ways prior to where he's talking, I think he actually gives a pretty good explanation. Okay. So let's see if this kind of clears up a little bit of information here. Okay, we're at 162. All right, guys, we're 3 likes away. 3 likes away, and we'll stick it around for a little while longer. All right. Okay, so I'm going to read this from this speech. It says, with regard to the employment side of our mandate, our revised statement emphasizes that maximum employment is a broad-based and inclusive goal. This change reflects our appreciation for the benefits of a strong labor market. Now, think about it. This is the change. They went from full employment to maximum employment. And it's not just a verbiage change, it's a meaning change behind it as well. This change reflects our appreciation for the benefits of a strong labor market, particularly for many in a low and moderate income communities. In addition, our revised statement says that our policy decision will be informed by our assessment of the shortfalls of employment from its maximum level, rather than by deviations from its maximum level, as in our previous statement, right? Shortfalls and deviations, right? So this change, okay, and this is critical to understand because, again, a lot of people just think, okay, money printer over inflation. Okay, no, it's money printer goes into investment, that investment into business, then has employment then gets paid, and then payment then adds to consumption, prices go up. So it's a very a very deliberate path that this is moving down. Okay, the change may appear subtle, but it reflects our view that a robust job market can be sustained without causing an outbreak in inflation. That is so important to understand, because back in the day, the Federal Reserve would adjust adjust employment, whether you had high employment or low employment, right, or unemployment, however you want to look at it. And by more people working, more people earning money, more people consuming, driving the inflationary scenario. That doesn't take place anymore. The interest rate adjustments that creates the inflationary scenario through the employment chain is not functioning like it once did. They recognize that, right? Again, I'll read it. The change may appear subtle, but it reflects our view that a robust jobs market can be sustained. You can have as many people working as you want. It won't create the inflationary scenario, right? That a robust jobs market can be sustained without causing an outbreak in inflation. Very unique. Most people didn't recognize it for that fashion. They just think money printer go burr, prices go up, but it's not that. It's the employment go up, prices go up, all right, because of the added consumption. All right, this is part of the Phillips curve too, by the way. This is what, and it's failing, right? I mean, they recognized that it was breaking down a long time ago, right? In earlier decades, when the Phillips curve was steeper, and this is, the Phillips curve is like, the more employment, the higher inflation. Okay. Inflation tended to rise noticeably in response to a strengthening labor market. Right? Again, it's like the more people working, the more consumption. It was sometimes appropriate for the Fed to tighten policy as employment rose towards its estimated maximum level in order to stave off unwelcome rise in inflation. Oh man, too many people are working. We can't have that. Y'all getting jobs. You're all starting to consume. You're all starting to drive the prices up. That's too much. Right? The Federal Reserve used to reckon, right? It was sometimes appropriate for the Fed to tighten policy as employment rose. As people were getting their jobs, you're like, no, you can't have job. Sorry, bro. You had your chance. You should have got one a while ago. But now that you're getting them and you're adding to this consumption and this inflation, we can't have that anymore. So we're going to tighten monetary policy. This is the way that they used to conduct themselves, right? I mean, it's right here, Estimated maximum levels in order to stave off unwelcome inflation. Okay. The change to shortfalls clarifies that going forward, employment can run at or above real-time estimates of its maximum level without causing concern. See, they can go ahead, work as much as you want. It won't create the inflationary scenario we're looking for because it doesn't work anymore like that, right? The change to shortfalls clarifies that going forward, employment can run at or above real-time estimates of its maximum level without causing concern unless accompanied by signs of unwanted increase in inflation or the emergence of other risks that could impede the attainment of our goals. Right? Everybody's working. Inflation is coming down. Is it coming down as fast for everybody that they want it to? Probably not. But is it moderately above 2%? It is. Now let's continue on. Let's think about this. Of course, when employment is below its maximum level, as it clearly the case now, we have to remember this was August of 2020. Right? We will actively seek to maximize that shortfall by using our tools to support economic growth and job creation. See, that's where the dropping of interest rates starts to stimulate the economy through investment into economic growth through job creation. We want to expand our businesses. Part of expanding business is hiring people. All right, we're at 173 likes. Thank you very much, guys. We'll stick it out here for at least another 20 minutes. All right. Okay. We have also made important changes with regard to price stability side of our mandate. Our long-run goal continues to be an inflation rate of 2%. Our statement emphasizes that our actions to achieve both sides of our dual mandate will be most effective if long-term inflation expectations remain well anchored at 2%. The long-term inflation expectations. Not the short term. Everybody's looking at the short term thinking that's what the Federal Reserve is going for on their 2%. It's not. It's the long term. They just said it, right? It's the long-term inflation expectation. However, if inflation runs below 2% following economic downturns but never moves above 2% even when the economy is strong, then over time, inflation will average less than 2%. That's the long-term view. It's falling below 2%. That's a problem. Households and businesses will come to expect this result, meaning that inflation expectations would tend to move below our inflation goal and pull realized inflation down. The whole inflation expectation in itself being too low would start realizing in a lower inflation scenario. Exactly what we were experiencing after the quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? To prevent this outcome and adverse dynamics that could ensue, our new statement indicates that we will seek to achieve inflation that averages 2% over time. Therefore, following periods when inflation has been running below 2%, appropriate monetary policy will likely aim to achieve inflation moderately above 2% for some time. In seeking to achieve the inflation that averages 2% over time, we are not tying ourselves to any particular mathematical formula that defines the average. Thus, our approach could be viewed as a flexible form of average inflation targeting. Our decisions about appropriate monetary policy will likely continue to reflect a broad array of considerations and will not be dictated by any formula. We don't have a formula, right? Of course, if excessive inflationary pressures were to build or inflation expectations were to ratchet above levels that is consistent with our goal, we would not hesitate to act. The long-term inflation expectation is consistent with their goal. They have inflation moderately above 2%. They are sitting in full employment, right? We got employment that is still fairly low, right? It's rising, but still doing quite well. Right? Everything is in line with exactly what it is that they were looking for. Yeah. Simon is 5 levels above your understanding sometimes. You have to understand all dollars are debt systems. Well, since Simon won't answer the question, what do you guys gather as a lesson learned from what Simon is exposing? I don't get it, man. Like, I mean, this is it, dude. Like, what is the lesson you need to learn? I don't know, dude. What is it that you need to do in your life that makes any difference from it? Maybe nothing, maybe just like, go vote for Trump and hope that he does the best job that he can and then go figure it out from there. Like, I think about what it is that I plan on doing into the future, and I'm thinking, okay, well, it was years ago that I saw the bullwhip effect starting to move its way through lumber, and I thought to myself, wow, if I was interested in getting a new car, I would hold off and wait because there's going to be a flood of new cars that is going to be landing into, the economy here in the future as the gap in production that is taking place right now is going to create oversupply, undersupplies in the future. Like, I know the bullwhip effect is going to do that to cars. Now, are you interested in buying a car? No? Dang, man, what else are you interested in? Maybe we can figure something else out. But if you can understand the economics of it, then you would understand that buying a car 2 years ago was a bad idea. But if you could understand the bullwhip effect, you would know good times are coming. But you're going to have to be prepared for it because the interest rates are going to be elevated. So you're going to have all the cash sitting on hand, because the only reason why the car is going to be as cheap as it is because nobody's buying one, because the interest rates are elevated. And unless you plan on taking out an interest rate or an elevated interest rate loan, then you're going to have the cash on hand in order to make that purchase. Like, I don't know. Do I need to teach? Like, is this the lesson you need to? I don't know. Is this the lesson you need to learn? I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, that's obvious, but I don't know. Maybe it needs to be spelled out. I mean, it's like, internalize the information and you'll just recognize it. It's not for us to like give you lessons, right? I am answering the question. Money is not what you think it is. Money is mutable, and there is a game that decides what it's worth. Money doesn't have a worth. Money is a transfer. It's currency, right? It takes you from the current state of working to a current state of possessing something, right? That's what it does. It's a currency. So it's not meant to do anything other than transfer services and goods to other services and goods. It's not a store of value. Anybody who takes it as a store of value or wishes it to be a store of value is being delusional. You can't do it that way. It's not that. Like, as much as we wish it to be that, it's not that. As much as somebody else wants to claim it to be that, it's not that. That's not what it does. It takes your goods and services and trades it to goods and services. That's it. That's what it does. It doesn't do anything else. What's wrong with adding a few zeros? I mean, it's just zeros, right? Is cash the best thing to hold right now? I mean, I think that there's buying opportunities coming into the future, but you have to be prepared for it. You also have to know that the dollars don't hold value. So being in cash is, in my opinion, is a good position to be in if you are looking for those buying opportunities going into the future. If you are not concerned about buying things cheaper in the future because of those buying opportunities that may present themselves inside of a liquidity issue, crisis kind of thing, then I wouldn't be sitting in cash, I'd be sitting in something else. But if you're, actively participating in the idea that you are going to move this cash into a unloved, undesired, valuable asset out there, then yeah, cash is a great position to be in because that's what you need to have on hand when those opportunities arise. Simon, you commented in the past that the neutral interest rate is related to growth. Is it actually a measure of growth, or what exactly is the relationship there and why? Okay, so, well, let's go back to the speech and talk about that real quick because he does actually describe the reasonings, right? Three main global trends account for the bulk of the decline of the neutral interest rate. Over the past century, one is demographics. Populations are aging as people live longer and birth rates have fallen. Now, this is also, you think about it, like how much activity takes place within the economy when you have an older population? Not much, right? They actually slow the economy down quite a bit and put a drag on the economy. This is one of the reasons why the global growth started to slow down around the world, which is the next thing, right? So we had the slowdown in population, we had this aging population that slows the economy down. And then in turn, right, the second is the productivity growth, which has slowed around the world, right? So again, if you can imagine, okay, I think I've used the analogy of like a plumber in a town. Like you've just all of a sudden you want to be like start a plumbing business in town. You go and you start this business, but then you realize there's all kinds of plumbers already in town. And there's not a lot of new construction taking place that would then, provide you with the business in order to be a plumber within that town. There's no room for growth, right? Now, if there was a lot of building taking place, new construction happening, well, then you can have new plumbers coming in and starting their businesses, and that's the room to grow. So I think that's probably like the simplest analogy of what was happening, is that there was just no more room to grow. Like all the growth had really taken place, and that the growth that was happening was very limited and cumbersome. And then final, right? The third is the heightened demand for safe and liquid assets, which has led to a wider wedge between yields on safe government securities or central bank reserves and the yields on riskier assets such as corporate bonds. So now this is another interesting one to think about, and that is the heightened demand for safe and liquid assets like the U.S. Treasuries. So now all this heightened demand for treasuries, really what was taking place? Like why was everybody wanting these US treasuries? See, a lot of people look at it and they say like, well, they want it for the investment of it. Why else would they hold it? Like that doesn't make any sense onto anything other than you buy a treasury with the anticipation that you're going to get the coupon, right? You're going to get an interest payment off of it. But that's not really what's going on with treasuries and the why people hold them. See, people hold treasuries because they want to do transactions. See, you can do transactions with cash. You can even use some other currency out there. But when you're using currency like cash, you're actually getting charged a fee. You get a fee for transferring, a fee for storing, there's all kinds of fees that are associated with it. Well, you can also transfer treasuries and do world trade. And by holding treasuries, you actually get paid a little bit of interest off of it. So treasuries ends up being the common form of doing transactions. And in order to do transactions with treasuries, right, you have to buy them. So this heightened demand for the safe and liquid asset like U.S. treasuries was elevated to the point that it drove yields very low. right? Nobody really cared about getting the return on it. They just wanted something to do the transactions with. They wanted that safe and liquid asset, the U.S. Treasuries. The yield on it was like almost inconsequential to them at that point. And so by driving the yields down ever further, this started driving the neutral interest rates down as well, right? Because pretty much everything follows the 10-year Treasury and all interest rates. So if you have this heightened demand for U.S. Treasuries, which is the basis of all currency out there and doing world trade, then what will end up happening is this heightened demand will drive the yields down on those Treasuries, which will also drive the neutral interest rate low as well. And so now stimulating the economy becomes very difficult. So when the Fed tries to go and lower interest rates, if you already have low yields on the U.S. Treasuries, buying Treasuries to drive the yields down is not really happening because you can't really get them any lower. And now if you have, here we go. If you have the wedge between the safe and liquid assets like U.S. Treasuries and you have the corporate debt and you have a very low gap between the two, when you drive the yields down on the Treasuries, what you will do is drive investment into corporations. So if the Federal Reserve wants to stimulate the economy, if there was a very close, narrow gap between the two, between the safe and liquid assets like U.S. Treasuries and the corporate debt that is existing out there, what the Federal Reserve can do is buy the U.S. Treasuries, driving the yields down on those. The investors who are looking for fixed income will then be forced into the corporations, then funding those corporations by simply driving the yields down on the Treasuries. This gives them more room into stimulating the economy. But if the interest rates are already low, stimulating the economy with the dropping of interest rates doesn't work because that wide gap doesn't spark investment into the corporations. So all that kind of makes sense. All right. Thank you so much, Jeff, for the $9.99. Thanks for the answer. Yeah, you bet. And I try to give it to you guys as best I can. All right, we're at 151, 196 people with 182 likes, $55 in super chats because you guys are always so generous with them super chats. What time is it? 10:30. All right, I'm going to have to get going here in about 10 minutes or so. Basically, what I'm gathering is that stimulating the economy means making money worth less, so we all work harder to get what we want. Am I right on track? No. I mean, I'm not going to say that that's wrong, right? But I don't think that's necessarily the intent. The intent of money printing, right? The intent of stimulating the economy is to lower interest rates. That lowering of interest rates sparks investment. The investment into business then has people hiring employees. Those hiring of employees then starts raising the consumption. The consumption then starts moving into the economy, which starts raising the prices. That's the way it goes, right? Now, we can look at it and give it meaning in any way we want, right? They lower interest rates, they bail out the corporations, they get our greedy bastards, and we get the scraps at the end. Okay, yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, something like that. That's the meaning you want to give it. It's the same story. It's just told differently, right? But it's the same thing. So again, it's like all about the meaning that we choose to give it. If that's the way you want to look at it, then, it's not inaccurate, but it's not the way I'm going to view it. And I view it much differently than that. I view it as like exactly how I say, it's just like they lower the interest rates. That sparks investment from the corporations to start moving into employment. Once you hire the employees, they work for a while. They start raising their consumption. The consumption causes the demand imbalances, supply-demand imbalances, and prices go up. Real easy, right? You want it to go the other way, you reverse course on it. Now, understanding that's how the Fed used to operate. That was how the Fed operated before. It doesn't work though, right? But we have to understand that's how it worked so that we can understand how the monetary policy is going to be conducted today, because it's all going to be about the verbiage and the words they use that talks about this situation of hiring and firing and unemployment and all this other stuff. But it doesn't really mean anything. We just learned that from Powell's speech. We learned it from Bowman's speech, right? See, it's important to understand like what kind of impact that it has on the economy, but then also understand that it doesn't work. But then nobody knows that it doesn't work and that the communication about it does. Right? I think I'm the only one who gets it. No, I'm not. You guys get it too. I know you do. You know, the dollar is only going to keep devaluing. It's only going to be printed. They aren't doing supply burns. They want a two-tiered society. The globalist parrot, you'll own nothing and be happy. Okay, mass awakening, you do realize that the Federal Reserve is doing quantitative tightening right now, and they're actually reeling in the currency. Right? I know I granted M2 global money supply is growing and all that other stuff, but okay, whatever. The Federal Reserve itself is in quantitative tightening. They are bringing their liabilities back. They are unwinding their balance sheet, right? That is the exact opposite of money printing. The exact opposite. Now, it's one of the reasons why I believe that there's liquidity issues coming, and they do plan on slowing down the quantitative tightening, right? They're going to reduce the amount that they are unwinding, but it's still quantitative tightening that is happening. And they're still in a attempted restrictive position, right? And if the neutral interest rate continues to rise at the same time that they are backing off on their balance sheet reduction, all this stuff is very not stimulating to the economy, but less restrictive, which is in a way is somewhat stimulating, right? I mean, if it's less restrictive, then, you know, it's not stimulating, it's less restrictive. All right. There's no such thing as money printing. It's actually demonetization. That's the difference. Okay. All right. At this rate, Simon will be a Fed consultant or a board member in a few years. I do wonder, like at times it was just like, because I think like at this point that I could probably advise a lot of the politicians out there who absolutely don't have any clue. And it seems that I don't know, it seems like everybody, like, I mean, I can't find it on the news. I can't find it in other articles out there. I cannot find anybody who is so adamant about the position that I have taken when it comes to the Fed's stance on inflation, the inflation expectation going into the future, the neutral interest rates, like everything that I have compiled and put together is not some kind of conspiracy theory coming from like, you know, these little pieces of like, you know, this misinformation that's spread out throughout everywhere. This is from their own communications to the other bankers. That's it. Like it's communications to the other bankers. That's what these speeches are all about. I mean, literally, like, I mean, every time they're like at some bank, some group or whatever, giving speeches to other bankers. And they're right here. I mean, you can go and read them for yourself, but nobody seems to. You know? And then when they do come out and talk about it, they come out on the mainstream media and misguide the people with what it is that what their intent is. And it's really obvious. I mean, it's really, really obvious. All right. Do you think that it would be fair to say that something which the government could actively do to improve things would be intentionally be as non-interventionist as possible? I mean, well, what would be improving things? Like, I think improving things would be painful. So it wouldn't look like it wouldn't, like, to me, improving would be painful. It would be a very painful experience. And most people would be like, dude, what in the hell, man? You're causing all this pain. And I'd be like, but yeah, but it's improving. You know, it's improving the situation by creating this painful experience. And people would ask me, well, how long is the painful experience going to last? And I'd be like, well, unfortunately for you, it's going to last the rest of your life. And in fact, it might even last the rest of your kid's life too. But it's improving. It's improving the situation, I guarantee you. Because the future generations after this will be very, very appreciative of the fact that we've gone through this pain that we are experiencing that nobody's going to want to deal with. Because in order to improve the situation, we got to experience some serious painful experiences. Like, I mean, serious ones. All right. Metal Sear, $5. Thank you so much. I'm a 79-year-old with lots of personal financial experience from a school of hard knocks, and I'm doing okay. I appreciate your take on things. Thanks. Well, thank you, Metal Sear, for the $5. I really appreciate that. And I always appreciate somebody who has experience out there, saying, hey, man, I really like dig your opinions. I dig your perspectives, keep going with what you're doing. Not everybody agrees with me. I get that. Like, I know that people aren't always going to agree with me. In fact, it's going to be pretty difficult for a lot of people to agree with me, considering that I say so many things that are completely different from what everybody else is saying out there. It makes it very difficult to then be like, okay, well, the whole world says something different, but the uneducated economist seems to, like, be very adamant about how right he is, but I am. Like, I mean, I know everybody feels that way about their information. But when I can see what it is that they're saying, like I can argue their argument better than they can. Like I can do that. And so when I can argue their argument better than them, then I know my argument's better, right? My argument's what mine is the correct one. So, and that's what I do regularly. Like I always try to fight my own argument with an argument that is better. And if I can't do that, then I know that it's the right one. And so I'm like, I will go up against anybody now with this economic theory. Like, this is the thing. I will go toe to toe with any economist out there. I don't care who they are. I mean, you can put the smartest dude in front of me right now. I don't care who it is. Right. And I will go toe to toe with this strategy and what it is that the Federal Reserve is attempting to do. I will go toe to toe with any economist out there, any one of them. All right. And I know that's a heavy, bold thing to say, but I am very serious, and I would have all the confidence. I would be very confident and have all the confidence in my information and everything that I am like believing and understanding about it, and I will debate anyone. Uh, Peace, love, and understanding. Elvis Costello. Yeah. Matt, clearly, debt is advantageous for wealthy people that utilize money market, take loans out on their own money and collateral. Consumer debt in general is bad. Look, yeah, and here's the thing. Um, you admit when you were wrong, mission accomplished. Yeah. I mean, I do admit when I am wrong. Like, I admit I was wrong about the housing market. I admitted that several times. Like, even today, I think about the experiences that I was going through and the information that I was looking at, and not taking in everything that, not not necessarily taking it in a realistic fashion, but taking it in more in a fearful fashion. And that was one of the problems that I was facing at the time, is that I had too much expectations, too much on the line. And that was really clouding my vision. When I step back and I look at why it is that I was feeling that way and looking at it, it literally had everything to do with the fact that I was trying to buy that house, right? And I was taking the information in a much different fashion than somebody who was just trying to acquire the knowledge and to break it down in a non-biased fashion. It makes it difficult when you have so much skin in the game, right? All right. Peace, Love, and Understanding is a cover song. Elvis Costello, great songwriter, just not that song. He made it famous, though. All right. Life is understanding, sacrifice. People as a whole never chooses sacrifice for a future they can't access. Uh, Could the Fed be undermining the perception of the liquidity of the Treasury as a policy tool? I don't think the Federal Reserve wants to undermine the idea of liquidity. Like, they don't want to create liquidity issues within the bond market, if that's the kind of the question behind it. Like, I think that they want to keep that bond market as liquid as possible. In fact, they are reducing the amount of balance sheet reduction that they are doing in order to provide more liquidity to the bond market, right? Instead of pulling, what was it, 65 billion off, they're going to take it down to like 20 billion. 30 billion. I can't remember the exact numbers. I should have wrote those down, but they're gonna reduce that. So that leaves a lot more money in the system than what would typically be pulled out. So when the market looks at that and says, "Oh wow, the Fed is leaving money in the system. They're leaving more in. That's going to be more liquidity for us to, to be selling and buying bonds with." Then that's going to be encouraging to the bond market in the liquidity issues that they may be facing. So to me, that effort is in conjunction with the Treasury doing their bond buybacks, who is also providing more liquidity to the bond market. So these two things are happening at the exact same time. Right? And I find that to be very interesting, considering that the bond buyback was announced like a year ago. Like they knew this moment was coming. It just happened to land right inside of a Federal Reserve, balance sheet adjustment decision, which they haven't made a decision on this for like months and months and months. They haven't done anything different. But all of a sudden, at the exact same time that the Treasury announces or doesn't announce, but fires up their bond buyback program because they announced it a year ago, they just happen to coincide with the balance sheet reduction plan. It's like it's too coincidental, for it to be like not planned. It was definitely planned, and I don't know why other people aren't like correlating this information together and putting it out there in an article. Like I don't get that. Like, I mean, it's just like it's obvious to me that this is liquidity issues within the bond market that they are trying to deal with ahead of time by putting out the credible threats. Right? We're going to buy back bonds and we're going to reduce our balance sheet runoff. These are, providing liquidity to the bond market. And it's not necessarily providing it, but it's reducing. Well, I guess the Treasury would be providing it, but with the Fed, it's reducing the amount that they would be pulling out, the liquidity, leaving liquidity in the system. Okay. All right. I guess instead of saying overvalued, a market may no longer be realized due to decoupling. Okay, look at what happens to children in Hollywood. Lots of evil people trading children for money. What are your thoughts on crypto? Do you think we ever be flipped into a digital dollar? Yeah, but it probably will happen with with stablecoin. I don't think that like a Bitcoin or any of the other fixed currency type cryptocurrencies will ever manifest themselves into like a world reserve currency. Like I don't think they'll ever achieve that kind of level. If they do, what will end up happening is that Gresham's law will have to kick in, meaning that the only way like a Bitcoin or gold standard could ever like become a world reserve currency is if the United States dollar completely collapses and no second place runner steps up except for the gold and Bitcoin. I don't see that happening. I don't see that taking place. Like it very well could, but it's a very long distance, long shot, so I'm not anticipating that being the case. So cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin will never be a world reserve currency, neither will gold. Not in my opinion, not without a total utter collapse of the dollar system. So if the dollar system stays in place, then what will end up happening is that we're going to find a move into digital currencies, like a central bank digital currency, but not even like a central bank digital currency. What I see is more stable coin. Stable coins can be regulated. They can build, like they don't need the government, the Fed they don't have to do anything. They don't have to put out any time, effort, energy, money, nothing in order to develop it all. People will do it all on their own using stable coins, right? So they'll develop the financial systems, all the work. Like they'll do all the work. The Fed and the government will regulate those stable coins, and then stable coins will be backed by dollars, right? So whatever monetary policy that is conducted by the Federal Reserve to the dollar will then transfer into the stable coin. You can then have stable coin out there working all the transactions, and you can pull the cash out of the system. And at that point, we'll be on a 100% digital currency. Now, whether it's a central bank digital currency or a stable coin that's being regulated and then monetary policy transferring through the dollar into it, I think it'll essentially end up being the same to the economy. Like there won't be any difference between those two. Sear. Thank you for the $5. What do you think of Yellen selling short-term bonds at a higher rate than long-term bonds? Is that what's really happening, or is the market buying them at that rate? Right? See, I mean, this is like, I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, we're offering it up at this, but it's another thing to say that the market is buying it at that. Right? So there's two different things happening here. You could, like, like, again, you could focus in the Yellen's doing this, or we could look at the market as doing that. And I think that's probably the better focus, is that the market is doing that. Now, granted, there is a position in how much is being sold and distributed and being purchased back. There's the demand for it coming out of the banking system. There's the demand for it coming from the world. There's all kinds of ways to be looking at where it is in this market that is causing the yield curve to be the way it is. Now, ultimately, I think a lot of it has to do with not only the unwinding of the balance sheet, but it also has to do with a lot of the fear that is coming from the market itself, and that is that they don't want to tie their money up for the short term, right? Just like everybody else out there, they see buying opportunity coming into the future. And now if you have distortions within the bond market that is coming from not only the buybacks or the issuance and the running off of the balance sheet coming from the Federal Reserve, which are two major distortions to the market, but then you also have this fear expectations of short-term financial conditions that leads people to say, hey, I want a higher interest rate for my cash if you want me to tie it up for the short term, because I am so fearful of the conditions that we are now present in. So all those things would start causing the short-term interest rates to rise. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it was done on purpose, even though it was most likely done on purpose, right? So with that being said, like, that's really how I look at it, is more of market conditions allowing this to take place as much as Yellen's doing this on purpose. All right. Thank you very much for the $1.99, Matt. You guys are really hitting me up with these super stickers and super chats. I really appreciate it. The YouTube algorithm